Picture this. You're working full-time while going to college full-time, you're exhausted, you're starving, and you walk into your dorm to find 3 girls who aren't even your roommates eating the last of your carefully prepared spaghetti. One of them has the audacity to tell you how delicious it is and asks for the recipe. So you look her dead in the eye and say, "Oh, that's pig brains from my family's farm." What happened next involved projectile vomiting, a bathroom that looked like a crime scene, and the most effective food theft prevention system ever invented. If you've ever fantasized about getting perfect revenge on people who constantly disrespect your boundaries, smash that subscribe button right now. Hit like if you're ready for a story where creative thinking and a little psychological warfare solve a big problem. This tale of college food thieves getting their comeuppance will have you cheering by the end. Trust me, you've never heard revenge served quite like this. Let me paint you a picture of what college life looks like when you're trying to do everything at once and barely keeping your head above water. I was one of those students living the double life that so many of us know all too well. Full-time college student by day, full-time worker by night, with barely enough hours left over for sleep, let alone basic human necessities like eating properly. My schedule was a carefully choreographed dance of survival, where every minute was accounted for and every decision was about maximizing efficiency. Most college students struggle with the infamous ramen noodle diet because they're broke and lazy. My problem was different. I actually had money from my job, but I had absolutely zero time to use it properly. Between classes, studying, work shifts, and trying to maintain some semblance of sanity, grocery shopping and meal preparation had become logistical nightmares that required military-level planning. So I developed a system. Once or twice a week, I'd dedicate a few precious hours to meal prep marathon sessions. I'd cook large batches of real, nutritious food, not the processed garbage that most college students survive on, but actual meals with vegetables, protein, and flavors that reminded me I was still human. Lasagna, stir-fries, hearty stews, pasta dishes loaded with meat and vegetables, food that would fuel my body and my soul through the grueling days ahead. Our dorm had a shared kitchen with a large refrigerator, and each resident had their own designated shelf. It was a simple system that should have worked perfectly. Everyone keeps their food in their assigned space, everyone respects everyone else's property, and everyone gets to eat what they paid for and prepared. Should have worked. But as anyone who's lived in shared housing knows, there's always someone who thinks the rules don't apply to them. My roommate had apparently decided that my meal prep sessions were actually a catering service provided for her convenience. But she didn't stop there. She'd invite her friends over, and they'd treat my carefully prepared meals like an all-you-can-eat buffet that existed solely for their entertainment. The first few times it happened, I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they didn't realize it was my food. Maybe they thought it was communal. Maybe they were having financial problems and were genuinely hungry. I'm not a heartless person. If someone had asked, if someone had explained they were struggling, I would have gladly shared. But that's not what was happening here. This wasn't about need or desperation or misunderstanding. This was about entitlement, disrespect, and a complete lack of basic human decency. Picture this scenario. You've just finished a 12-hour day that started with morning classes, continued through afternoon labs, and ended with an evening shift at work that left you mentally and physically drained. Your feet hurt, your brain is fried, and all you want is to eat something that doesn't come from a vending machine and collapse into bed for a few hours before doing it all over again. You drag yourself up to your dorm room, fantasizing about that beautiful container of homemade lasagna waiting for you in the fridge. The lasagna you spent your one free evening that week preparing. The lasagna that represents the difference between surviving and actually living during this insane period of your life. And then you open the refrigerator to find nothing. Just an empty space where your food used to be. Maybe a few sad crumbs stuck to the bottom of your container if you're lucky. But here's where it gets really infuriating. 9 times out of 10, I wouldn't just discover my missing food. I'd walk into the kitchen to find my roommate and her friends actively eating my meals right in front of me, like they were entitled to it. And they had the absolute audacity, the unmitigated gall, to compliment my cooking while they were stealing it. "Oh my God, this is so good," they'd say, with their mouths full of my food. "You're such an amazing cook. I wish there was more." The casual cruelty of it was breathtaking. They weren't just stealing my food. They were rubbing my face in it, making me watch while they consumed the meals I'd spent hours preparing and could barely afford to replace. It was like being mugged by someone who stops to tell you how much they love your wallet. I tried talking to them. Multiple times. I used every approach I could think of. Polite requests, firm boundaries, angry confrontations, even attempting to appeal to their basic human decency. "Please stop eating my food," I'd say. "I work really hard to prepare these meals, and I don't have time or money to keep replacing them." Their responses ranged from fake apologies to outright dismissal. "Oh, sorry, we didn't think you'd mind," followed immediately by doing it again the next day. Or my personal favorite, "You make such good food. You should be flattered that we want to eat it." The entitlement was staggering. In their minds, my meal prep sessions weren't about my survival. They were about providing entertainment for their taste buds. My financial sacrifices and time management struggles were irrelevant compared to their desire for free, high-quality meals. After weeks of this psychological torture, something inside me snapped. Not in an angry, explosive way, but in a cold, calculating way that suggested it was time to get creative with problem solving. These girls were treating me like a doormat because they believed there would be no consequences for their actions. They'd stolen my food dozens of times, ignored my requests, and dismissed my complaints because they thought I was powerless to stop them. What they didn't realize was that they'd just declared war on someone who had both the motivation and the creativity to fight back. I decided it was time to teach them a lesson about assumptions. Specifically, the assumption that they knew what they were eating. I went home to my parents' house that weekend with a mission. I was going to prepare the most delicious, tempting meal possible. Something so appealing that my food thieves wouldn't be able to resist it. But I was also going to prepare a psychological weapon that would ensure they never, ever touched my food again. I made spaghetti. Not just any spaghetti, but the kind of spaghetti that makes your mouth water just thinking about it. I spent hours crafting a meat sauce that was rich, complex, and absolutely irresistible. The meat mixture was carefully selected and prepared. Lean beef and pork sausage combined in proportions that would create the perfect texture and flavor profile. But here's where my plan got diabolical. I deliberately chose meats and preparation methods that would create a final product that looked, shall we say, questionable. The ground meat mixture, when cooked properly, had a texture and appearance that could easily be mistaken for something far less appetizing if you were already primed to think about it in a certain way. I made enough spaghetti to feed a small army, knowing with absolute certainty that my roommate and her friends would devour every last bite. I wasn't disappointed. I returned to the dorm after another exhausting day, and there they were. 3 girls who weren't even my roommates, standing in my kitchen, eating my food like they owned the place. The massive bowl of spaghetti I'd prepared was almost empty, and they were clearly enjoying every bite. One of them, a girl who had never spoken to me before except to compliment my stolen food, looked up with sauce-covered lips and had the nerve to ask, "This is incredible. How did you make it? What's your secret?" This was the moment I'd been waiting for. I looked her straight in the eye, my expression completely neutral, and delivered the line I'd been rehearsing. "Oh, that's just a common meal we make back on the farm," I said matter-of-factly. "We go to the butcher and get head cheese. That's the meat you're tasting in the sauce." I could see the confusion in her eyes. These were city kids who probably thought meat came pre-packaged from the grocery store, with no understanding of traditional food preparation methods or farm-to-table cuisine. "Head cheese?" she asked, her chewing slowing down as uncertainty crept into her voice. I nodded seriously. "Yeah, it's pig brains. Really good, isn't it? That's what most of my meals are made from. Organ meat from the farm. Much more flavorful than regular cuts." The transformation on her face was absolutely priceless. I watched in real time as her brain processed what I'd just told her, as the delicious meal she'd been enjoying suddenly became something horrifying in her mind. The bowl slipped from her hands and crashed to the floor, spaghetti sauce splattering across the kitchen tiles like a crime scene. But that was just the beginning of the show. She bolted toward the bathroom, but she didn't make it. The psychological impact of believing she'd eaten pig brains triggered an immediate and violent physical reaction. She started vomiting before she even reached the bathroom door, leaving a trail of projectile vomit across the dorm room carpet. By the time she made it to the bathroom, she was in full-blown panic mode, puking everywhere as she tried to reach the toilet. The bathroom looked like something out of a horror movie. Vomit on the walls, vomit on the floor, vomit splattered across the mirror. She had literally painted the bathroom with the contents of her stomach while trying to expel every trace of my pig brain spaghetti. The other 2 girls took one look at their friend's violent reaction and bolted from the dorm like the building was on fire. They didn't ask questions. They didn't offer to help clean up. They just ran, probably convinced that they too had been poisoned by my farm-fresh organ meat cuisine. The beauty of it was that I hadn't actually done anything wrong. The spaghetti was perfectly normal, lean beef and pork sausage, exactly what you'd expect from a quality meat sauce. But their guilty consciences and city kid squeamishness had turned a delicious meal into their worst nightmare. Sometimes the most effective revenge isn't about what you do. It's about what people think you've done. These girls had spent weeks treating me like I was powerless, like my boundaries meant nothing. One carefully chosen lie completely flipped the power dynamic and solved my problem permanently. So, what do you think? Was this brilliant psychological warfare, or did I go too far with the pig brain story? Have you ever had to get creative to stop people from disrespecting your boundaries? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to know your most creative revenge stories. If this tale of food thieves getting their comeuppance made you laugh, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories of problems solved through pure psychological genius. Sometimes the best revenge is just letting people's own assumptions destroy them.